Hello, this is Troy Sote, and this is Chapter 9 on David Hammons. And this chapter focuses on art and its relationship to heritage and how I'd say how identity impacts an artist. And it's specifically, our example is David Hammons. So that is Hammons on your right. This is a little bit of an older picture. This is probably in the 80s or 90s. Yeah, but that's David. Uh, so let's keep moving. If I can figure out PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. That was easy. About the artist, he was born in Springfield, Illinois in 1943. I would say that's significant because he would have lived through the whole civil rights era, and he would have been influenced by people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all of the big names in the 50s and 60s especially. So anyway, he was born in Springfield, Illinois. He went to Los Angeles. He moved to Harlem, New York, and I believe that's where he still lives. And he moved in the 80s, and he is classically trained in printmaking. Unfortunately, we won't get to watch or look at very many of his prints, but I do have one on the left there for you. And I'll talk about that process in just a second. So let's talk about his artistic progression and his philosophy behind his work. We'll start with his academics. Obviously, he was a printmaker. He also was a painter too, but he would use his own body in printmaking, especially instead of any of the plates or any of the lino blocks, that sort of thing. And what he would do is he would put some sort of fat or like lard or grease on the side of his body, and then he would press himself onto his canvas. Let's go back for a second. He would press himself onto the canvas, and then he would get up. Then so that would leave this resin of whatever choosing on the canvas, and then he would sprinkle something like graphite over top, and of course that's going to stick to the lard. And so already very non-traditional printmaking. Um, so that kind of was an omen for what would happen later, probably about the what do I say? I think it's like 70s, mid 70s. He kind of redefines the self, is what I called it. Um, he spends he does printmaking in Los Angeles for a while, and then he moves to Harlem, and he completely gets away from printmaking and completely falls out of the public eye. And during this time, he has really enveloped himself into African American history and heritage and all of the things that are really, really fresh, as I previously mentioned already, on the American or on the dinner table of the American people, right? These are things that everybody's talking about, no matter what side you are on. And so that greatly influenced his work going into the 80s and 90s. And it kind of brings us into this modern era, or this new era, where he will be using really abnormal materials for his primarily sculptures. Um, and it's just really interesting to see that sudden progression. And just a couple of notes. Um, yeah, he moves from identifying himself as a single entity in his artwork to more of a spokesperson for the collective identity of all African Americans and eventually all underrepresented people, as we'll see in more of his newer work. Okay. So I just wanted to show you this quote. The art audience is the worst audience in the world. It is overly educated. It's conservative. It's out to criticize, not to understand, and it never has any fun. Why should I spend my time playing to that audience? And so that goes towards. So we talked about the philosophy behind why he's doing these things, but he also projects this philosophy forward onto who he wants to be seeing his pieces, and the things he's going to be making his pieces out of, and where he's you know putting these pieces for viewing. Originally, a lot of these have moved hands now, but a lot of these original pieces of his were displayed right in Harlem and right in the epicenter of where the population he wants to be viewing it can view it. Um, and so I thought that was just really interesting. He has this whole disdain for the modern art scene and just views it. Well, frankly, he just hates the European um, track that it has taken. So we have in front of you now three of the pieces that, frankly, I just like the most. So that's why we're displaying them. His symbolism is so heavy. Going from left to right, we have the Untitled Night Train. There, he did a series of these sculptures actually, or on the left. I don't know what I said. On the left, we have the Untitled Night Train, circa 1989, and so uh, super symbolic. He's using coal and these you almost can't tell if you're not looking, but there are these glass flasks, these glass liquor bottles that have the concave actually and stack beautifully, like you can see. But yeah, the symbolism here is just so rich. Um, and so I'll let you kind of dissect that on your own. But we'll keep moving on to like the next piece, circa 1992. Uh, this piece is entirely constructed out of wire, stone, pantyhose, leather, and hair. Uh, so um, he would use only found objects in this new sort of era of his work, and that included things that he could find right in Harlem. And of course, in the barbershops in Harlem, he was able to access an abundance of hair. And so that just goes on to say how much he wanted to address stereotypes and address history. Speaking into the history aspect, if we look at the third and final piece from this kind of redefining of self era, you have the African American flag, which he did in the 1990s, and it's entirely made out of dyed cotton. And referencing uh, that's referencing the South. That's referencing an entire era of slavery and oppression, and how that built America. And anyway, it's just very interesting the way he is. If you're able to look up more of his pieces, the way he puts uh, symbolism into his pieces and the conversation the piece has with the viewer. So to finish out, we have one of his most recent works, uh, Day's End, and this will be in New York. All right, so that is his most recent sculpture, Day's End, and this has been Chapter 9 on David Hammons. Thank you for listening, everybody, and be sure to stay safe. Okay, bye.